got a very short message, but I do want to point out something that is really, really incredible. And I've never been in a situation where this particular point was going to be so potentially clear as it can be here tonight because of what we've chosen to do, what Laurel's chosen to do, what Joseph's chosen to do, what I've chosen to do, other people. So belief as obedience. I'm going to be talking more about this as we move forward, but this is just going to be really probably everything needs to be said on it. I'm going to just talk because I like to talk after that. So this is one of three scriptures we're going to take a very brief look at. It's in Luke 6:46, and it's shortly after the Beatitudes and other stuff like that. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a sec. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I say? Now, in every other, see if this is true. In just about every other church setting I've ever spent significant time in, an opening to a sermon like this, I would brace myself, and I could see other people around the room doing it, that we were going to get harangued about being obedient. I don't want to take away from what the Lord said, but I want you to reserve a little part of your spirit and your heart to receive this in a way that isn't that way. Okay? So there are two necessities of effective discipleship. The first one is characterized by this. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I say? This challenge that Jesus issued was right at the beginning of his ministry. It followed his baptism. It followed very shortly after his return from the wilderness temptation. In a more defining context, it was literally in Scripture in Luke, right on the heels of him choosing the 12 and calling them to follow him, out of a number of other people that call him. It is, and it was, the necessary foundation to be a disciple. To listen to what he says and do it. Now, it is also what makes us who we are called to be. It's what makes us sons. It's what makes us followers. It's what makes us and empowers us to be image bearers. Okay? The second scripture is this one. John 7:17. If anyone is willing to do his will, he will know of the teaching, whether it is of God or whether I speak from myself. Jesus said this. He said it in a relatively hostile environment when he was being challenged on so many fronts by the religious leaders of the day. What gives you the right to do this? What signs are you going to give? What are you going to do? How do we know? By what right do you do this? You know, I think prior to this was the incident of the cleansing of the temple a little bit. But it was that kind of environment. And Jesus said, this is Jesus saying this, okay? And I'm emphasizing that because we don't. We evaluate ideas on how wise they seem to us. But we are not the standard for what is wisdom. We shouldn't try to be. We shouldn't limit ourselves to being that. If anyone is willing to do his will, he will know of the teaching, whether it is of God or whether I speak from myself. How can we know if we are willing to do his will? How can I know if you're willing to do his will? I don't really have the right to sit in judgment of you. I don't have the right to probe and draw all kinds of inferences and conclusions. But the question is, all of us have the capacity to show, to prove, to know that we are willing to do his will. And what he says about that is, if we are willing to do his will, the one that is willing will know the teaching. whether it is of God, or Jesus was saying whether it is of me, because they were saying, well, how do we know? And what Jesus was saying was so out of sync a little bit with what was the common stuff being taught. There were by this time a couple of centuries of enshrined teaching that do this, don't break this, don't do this, do that. And he ran afoul of all of that in one way or another, the gathering grain on the Sabbath, doing a few things like that. Not to be malicious, not to be irreverent, but because he came here to do just one thing, and that was to do the will of his Father. That's it. So some of you have heard me say, all of you that have been at Joyland a while have heard me say it, but some of you even that are visiting tonight have heard me say, Christianity 101, the way I like to describe it is listen to the Lord, learn to listen to the Lord, and do what he says. Now, does anybody have a really big Bible? I had a big one in the back, but I can't find it, because this is kind of a wimpy Bible. It's a whole thing. It's New American Standard, but it's really small type. I was hoping somebody had like I've got a big old hardback, or maybe even somebody might have brought a family Bible or one of those. Even this little book, you and I deceive ourselves if we think that there is enough time in our life to study this and get everything interpreted correctly. And that if that happened, we would somehow be better off. We would not be. Because we cannot. We cannot. And I love the Bible. But that's not its purpose. It isn't a gigantically complex owner's manual, as I've heard it talked about at times. It's not an encyclopedia of Christian behavior. It is a revelation that is fulfilled in Jesus, so that when we look at him, and we see him a lot in here, and we hear him a lot in here, but when we see him and we do what he's doing, or what he's saying, we know the Father. That's how it works. So the way that I can tell that you are willing is because you're doing something. You're doing, hopefully, the latest thing he told you to do. And tonight, the reason that simple principle is so exciting for me to have prepared for and bring up is because Laurel and the worship team chose to do that. They chose to do what the Lord said. And Laurel confessed to us publicly here, but she confessed to all you guys when you're going, I don't exactly know what we're going to do. So knowing perfectly is not the issue. It's hearing. Even hearing perfectly is not the issue. And we'll see that. I borrowed some other voices that'll help that. We can know, you can know, and really the person that's important is, how do I know about me? How do you know about you? Well, if I'm willing to do, he promises that I will know the teaching. Whether it's from him, whether it's from me, whether it's some wild-haired idea that I got, or whether it's something that the enemy's sown into the culture, or whether it's somebody that is super well-meaning, like I was, and still try to be, but really was most of my life, but just was borrowing other people's thoughts, other people's systems. That's not how we live. That's not how we're called. That's not how Jesus lived. We're called to live like Jesus. And he does what the Father does. Okay. Now, in simple terms, if we're willing to do what his will is, what the Father's will is, we will know what the teaching, wherever it comes from, whether it's from God or whether I speak for myself, is what he said to them. So here's the deal. Obediently putting into action what we think, that could come from prayer. It could come from journaling. I do that. And there's a lot of little triangles that are signals that I think I heard God, that a lot of them I have. Some of them I haven't. They'll show up. That's not the issue. Perfection's not the issue. It's obediently putting into action what we think in prayer or the Bible or dreams or other revelations that he's asked us to do. It's not about perfection. It's simply about obeying, doing it. Okay? I borrowed a few voices. Let me see if Richard can guess who the first voice I borrowed from the past is. I can't think of his name right now.
George McDonald.
Oh, well, let's see if they're right. All right, so here are some historic voices that you guys will recognize. Most of you will, except for Richard. And here's one thing George McDonald says about this verse up here. The verse, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I say? Okay, so listen to this carefully and just apply it to yourself. Instead of asking yourself whether you believe or not, ask yourself whether you have this day done one thing because he said, do it, or once abstained because he said, do not do it. It is simply absurd to say you believe or even want to believe in him if you do not do anything he tells you. Have any of you ever been confused about whether or not you really believe, or you believe good enough, or your faith is strong enough, or anything like that? I have. Now I have a way to know. I think I heard you say, call this person. I believe. Laurel thought she heard him say, let's have a little bit more of a free-form worship and see where God takes it. She believed. Yeah, it did. It helps when it turns out to be awesome, but it doesn't turn out to be awesome every time. Sometimes you have to do things and you have to walk away just knowing that you did. And that's okay, because we're not redeemed by being omniscient. God covers that. We're redeemed by being obedient. And it's not just redeemed. This is what, when I started, I said, mostly when you thought a message like this was coming, it was going to be, you're going to be whipped into being more obedient. No, that's not the point. The point is obedience is transformative because it aligns us with what Jesus did. All right, so that's McDonald. Here's one, C.S. Lewis. To trust him, think how practical this is. Listen to this for practicality. To trust him means, of course, trying to do all that he says. There would be no sense in saying you trusted a person if you would not take his advice. It's not hard. It's not complicated. It's not hidden. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, you guys know who he is? Okay, there's that. He had a movie made about him not too long ago, huh? Powerful. Only he who believes is obedient. And only he who is obedient believes. It's not a new idea. It's not my idea. I'm just thankful that I'm attracted to it and starting to put it into play. Here's some interpretations of the John 17:17, or 7:17. If anyone is willing to do his will, he will know of the teaching, whether it is of God or whether I speak of myself. And my buddy George McDonald says, obedience is the opener of eyes. Are you confused about something? Is there anything that you can think of doing that would be an act of obedience? It'll clear it up. It'll correct your vision. It'll overcome your assumptions, your fears. Dallas Willard, any of you guys familiar with him? He passed away not too long ago, but a pretty cool theologian, kind of a revolutionary one here. Understanding is not required to obey, but obedience is the doorway to greater understanding. That's true, really. You don't have to know why. I don't know if Laurel knew why. We could guess, because it's not our first rodeo, but, you know. Oswald Chambers, anybody ever use the my utmost for his highest? I love that. Loved him. The golden rule for understanding spiritually is not intellect, but obedience. You can't think your way into spiritual revelation. You have to do it. I didn't put him up here, but Georgian Banov was very animated one time, and he stood up there and said, Jesus didn't say, come and think. He said, come and drink. I thought that was funny. He's a sweet guy. Here's Dietrich Bonhoeffer again. This is a guy who lived through as much cataclysm as what we were talking about earlier with believers over in Iran right now. It is no use asking questions, for it is only through obedience that you come to learn the truth. Now, these are just men, but they're men whose wisdom has proven to have an impact through the ages. Certainly, most of them have touched my life pretty significantly. So here's the conclusion. Obedience, however imperfectly. I highlighted that because I don't want you putting a burden on yourself to be perfect. You can't think your way into perfection either, but you can obey your way into it. Okay? Obedience, however imperfect, to what we believe we hear, sense, or read, and then there's a caveat to reading. I said earlier that the goal of correctly interpreting and understanding everything in here is probably an unreachable goal, because this speaks about a bunch of infinite stuff that is progressively being revealed and will probably continue until we stand and see Jesus, who is everything that this word desires to reveal, revealed. Again, go for understanding, and all you're getting, get understanding, the scripture says. But I backed up. Obedience, however imperfectly, to what we believe we hear, sense, or read, because you can hear God from here. If there's a sense in the Bible of that personal witness that jumps out, Rhema kind of thought that, oh, Lord, you steered me to this. Go for it. Obey it. If there's something there to obey. If there's something there to obey. Don't put yourself as a slave to just randomly try to figure out some obedient action to every single thing on here. Let the Lord use this to reveal and speak to you. And you could come up afterwards and argue that with me if you want. You'd have every right. But I think there's plenty that he's going to say. Is not only a necessity, but the primary God-given, Jesus-modeled way for us to grow, to live and do like Jesus lived and did, and to be transformed into our identity as sons and daughters and effective kingdom disciples. And I think effective is probably the key word in my thought there. Because discipleship is not a standard that we are trying to attain to. It is a function that we are trying to fulfill. Remember, Jesus said that thing about, why do you not do what I say? Just after he had called his disciples. And a little ways down the road, he sent them out. And they didn't know what they were doing. But they obeyed. And they started healing people. And they got so excited about it and so transformed by it, they came back and they were all whooping it up that they'd seen demons under their power. And he had to remind them, well, calm down. That's not the end. That's just the means. That's just the beginning. So it's the way for us to grow. And this idea of God-given, Jesus-modeled, all I mean by that is this verse, John 5:19. Therefore, Jesus answered and was saying to those that were challenging him about who he was and what the signs were and all this kind of stuff. Therefore, Jesus answered and was saying to them, truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of himself unless it is something he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, these things the Son also does in like manner. And just a reiteration of this point in John 14, He says, these words are not my own. They're the Father working in me. And so I would just say to us, how have we missed the critical nature of the point that if that's how Jesus lived, why do we think we can live another way? Why do we think we can analyze our way through life? We need to listen. And if we have the least little hint that he's asking us to do something, do it. Do you think he won't protect us if we misunderstand? Do you think he won't protect us if we step a little too far? But this stuff transforms us, not what we educate ourselves with. Discipleship means to be a follower, and following means to listen and do. So, now too often, I said, this thing is given and receiving is harsh. That's probably a blend of the flesh and the enemy. That the one two-part thing that will transform you utterly and change the world completely and steer your life accurately. Of course, there's opposition to that. And if they can't convince us, the flesh or the enemy, that we should just ignore him because of what George MacDonald said, it's absurd to even think you believe in him if you don't try to do what he says. Okay, so that was maybe taken off the table a long time ago. But what I find often happens is that religion, which is a blend of the flesh and the enemy, religion complicates things. It sets up dualistic standards of perfection, that you can't be successful unless you're perfectly successful. You can't be complete unless you're all the way complete. None of us would have ever walked if that was the way the process worked. Your little girl gets around pretty good, but I bet it wasn't too long ago till she fell down a few times on a regular basis as a part of the process, right? And so you guys probably kept her mostly in an environment where she wasn't going to get beat up falling down, my guess. And you think the Father doesn't do that for us? You think he doesn't celebrate when we say, yes, I'll take that step. I don't know where it's going to go. Okay, I do, but I'm not going to tell you because you'd get all hooked up over it and it would be a mess. So anyway, that's it. So we have time for some questions or comments or thoughts, as we always do, and then I'm going to turn this over to a few other people. Anybody?
Thank you, Larry. It's a great message, man. While you were talking, God just told me to say, this exactly what you're talking about is something that ties right in with this last weekend. And the 7 spirits of God and the 7 ancient pathways and all the stuff that he's revealing right now. And there's really practical steps that we can do. Like, where have I engaged knowledge as God? Where have I engaged wisdom as my own wisdom that has become God? And how do I go through and repent for how I've sinned against his spirit? The spirit of wisdom is beautiful and kind and joyful and amazing. And we have said that we are wise. We say that we are doing things that are wise, but we do not know wisdom. She's real. She's a person. And so there's a whole list of the 7 spirits of God, and we can repent for anywhere where we've not been leading the Spirit by the Spirit that are in those categories. And it's such a simple way to be able to start to re-engage with those things and be taught again. Right? So, yeah.
You can ask my husband. This is one of my favorite subjects. I call it objective obedience.
Oh, cool.
Because it just happened like the other day. God was telling us to do stuff, and he didn't give me this whole plan. He said, it just started with, go drink water. And I did, and then he's like, oh, we'll do this. Oh, we'll do this. Oh, we'll do this. And I ended up way down there, and I was like, oh, that's cool. He wasn't just like, here's your mission statement. Go. You have all the information. But that's part of trust and faith. And the way I look at it is, if we're too much trying to inspect each step. We're walking like this, and it's so hard to run like that. That's all.
Yeah, you know, it's not only part of trust. If you think about it, there is no other way for trust to be developed than to receive partial revelation and obey it. There's no other way. If we didn't have, and I mean, I'm using we personally, if in this room we did not receive partial revelation, we would either receive no revelation at all, or we would be so overwhelmed, like when Moses said, Lord, show me your glory, and God said, I'll cause my goodness to pass, but you can't look at me and see it all. You can't. We would be so overwhelmed that it would be like having no revelation at all. So we have to do, what'd you call it, objective obedience? Yeah. Listen long enough to hear and do it. Ronnie, you look like you were coming up.
So this is a thought. It's not so much a question. For many, many, many years, I felt like I couldn't hear God. And the beginning of doing all this stuff involves hearing God. So I want to encourage you, if you are struggling with that it's possible to find a way where you can know that it's God. And the first few times you may not know, but what really helped me and what I see in the past would have been there all along, it would have been a lot easier, was to simply do the default that I can hear God and agree with yourself that you can. And if you're doubting it, just doubt your doubts and say, I can hear God. And the thing that Larry talked about, that God will protect us if we start following down a path we are quite sure he told us and it's not it, he's going to guide us somewhere else. So we can trust him. So if you get to the point where you feel like you can trust God, then you can I don't know about easily, but you should be able to simply say, what I hear is from God, and then act on it.
All right. Anybody else before we move into the next thing? Take your time.
See if I can articulate what I'm thinking. So when I'm thinking that it's God talking to me and I don't do it, then I know it's God, because I feel like guilty or something, you know. So then you right, then you know. Okay.
No, that is a brilliant way to learn. I mean, he's got us coming and going. He's got us coming and going. That's cool. That's good, Janet. That's really good. That needed to be said. That needed to be said. Yeah, I just give you permission to be set free from perfect hearing and from some weird definition of perfect obedience. Perfect obedience is doing what he said, doing what you heard, taking the first step, and then take as many until he says, oh, no, don't take that one. Okay? Simple. All right, so earlier this week, Marissa Bell gave me a call, and she said that she had a friend who wanted to do a mikvah. Would it be possible to use the facility at the church? And I said yes. And I thought about it, and I know kind of by definition what a mikvah is, but I have no super deep understanding. I like the idea of what I think it is. I always like interfacing with the Lord for the sake of renewal, cleansing, all that kind of stuff. So I will talk no longer. If you'll come up, I will switch the screen.
I'll tell you.
M-I-K-V
V-A-H, yeah.
Or E-H.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, M-I-K-V-A-H. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I wrote a little something here just so that I can stay on track. So I'll read first what I wrote. In the beginning, everything began in a mikvah. In the beginning, everything was immersed in water. A mikvah is not a Jewish-only tradition. It's actually a principle, an ancient way that is deeply rooted in all of creation. A mikvah is a beautiful, holy, and sacred act, and one of the most powerful things you can ever intentionally choose to do. Yeshua did a mikvah in that day, in those waters with John, and we're all very familiar with that scene. It is an act that is held sacred, very sacred. A beautiful picture of a mikvah is in Genesis, where it says, "In the beginning, the Spirit was hovering or brooding over the waters." I love that picture because when you willingly choose to do a mikvah as the Lord is leading you to, it's like you're being immersed back into the original intent that Yahweh had when you were created, when you were being birthed here on earth. It's like you go back into those waters where the Spirit is brooding over those waters and releasing what it is in that season that the Lord is wanting to release to you. One of the things that's really powerful to me when I think about this is that, and I'll share something that my husband did before we were actually married. Even before we started courting, he went to Israel, and the day before coming back, they were in the Galilee, and he decided to take a mikvah. And one of the things that he asked the Lord was to show him his wife. And I know another person that actually did this. I just found out like a few months ago. And so that was that. And then when he returned, I met with him just to find out how his trip was and hear a testimony about his trip to Israel. And he talked about his testimony, but he didn't tell me that part. Hi, honey. And during that time, the Lord had been giving me some dreams about him and I, and some instructions. And the Lord wanted me to share the dreams with him. And I was kind of perplexed. I'm like, okay, well, he's the guy he's supposed to pursue. Like, what is this about? So I met with Yana, and she told me, well, you have to talk to him. And this ties into, what Larry was talking about, belief. I was trusting that I was hearing the voice of the Lord because I was doubting. But I took that step. And when he told me about what he did in Israel, and that was like 7 days after coming back, was when we met. And he shared that with me, that he had asked the Lord to show him his wife. So in turn, I had to come to him and tell him about the dreams in obedience to the voice of the Lord, because in that way he was answering his request to the Lord to show him his wife, because at the time he was not trusting himself to be able to choose for himself. So it really ties in so well when it comes to belief, because I had to trust the voice of the Lord. And in that way, he got his answer, and we started courting and we got married. Another young couple friend of ours, he also took his first mikvah. He asked the Lord for his wife. And I believe a year later, I want to say, right? A year later, they started courting and they got betrothed and they got married. So that's just one little example of what the waters of the mikvah do. And one of the things, does, and one of the things that we can, ponder about is when Yeshua immersed himself in the waters, he was not declaring himself to be saved necessarily. He immersed himself as a declaration, and also in a way, he baptized those waters, because he was not going to be declaring, well, I believe in, he was Son of God himself. He immersed himself as a way to show us an example of how sacred and holy that act is. And after that, we know the story, as the Spirit led him into the wilderness, and he was tested. So Does anybody have any questions about a mikvah at all? What's the difference? Jen? I know you have the answer.
Honestly, the easy answer is just that a baptism is the watered down version of the mikvah. It's something that was ancient. It's what Yahweh declared in the cleansing of the waters to do. John the Baptist, then John Yochanan the mikvaher, showed up and kind of took it to another level. But it really is just because of church tradition that has taken us away from our Hebrew roots. They just made it a lesser thing. So it is because the difference, are you going to say the difference? So we have what is it, Methodist, Catholic, they just sprinkle, right? And then we have the other denominations that'll do the dunk. This difference is that you, when you do a mikvah, you go in yourself and you go in 3 times. You take this dip 3 times. There's going to be, I actually don't know this part. I'm just learning this part. There's 3 different things that you do with each dip. But the basic answer is that the baptism is just the church version of what Yahweh originally established with the mikvah when he declared his ways.
And and it has become basically, when you do it for the first time in a baptism, whichever church it is, you're making a declaration of your belief in that pull that the Lord has for you to dedicate your life to the Lord. And when people take mikvahs every week. My husband actually takes a mikvah every day, but I don't. And some people will do it when there's the different feasts in the Bible. They will take a mikvah before those. And also, if we think about Mount Sinai, when the Lord told the people to cleanse themselves and basically set themselves apart and wear clean garment, because in 3 days he was going to show up and speak to them. So in that way, it was a preparation, it was a cleansing. And also the high priest, whenever he would go into the tabernacle and later on the temple, they would do a mikvah before coming in to the presence of the Lord and before performing any of the holy acts within the tabernacle or the temple at the time. And again, it's a rededication as well. When you go in and you're reclaiming your identity, you're reclaiming your sovereignty, you're reclaiming the fact that you were made into the image and likeness of God, and it's a public declaration, and it's a declaration to the cosmos of who you are. And
well, it sounds like the experience that I had when I went under the waters. So I'm to me, you're describing my experience, my first time when I was water baptized, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
And and honestly, in the eyes of the Lord, there's really not a difference. You have your conviction, and you're entering into those sacred waters, and you come back out of those waters, and you're truly not the same.
In fact, every time I received a new revelation, I got baptized 10 times because I got a new revelation of it. And the pastor kept on, "What, you just already," I said, "But I feel like I feel like I got this new revelation."
That is wonderful, because it is that leading of the Spirit, and it's that obedience, and it's that trusting. You can never go wrong with immersing yourself however many times you want, because we're always in renewal and we're always entering a new season, and there's always this transformation that's taking place within us, that you can do it however many times you want. Yeah.
A thought that I had, if there's anybody here who, because of their church tradition, baptism has kind of become like sacrosanct in that sense, and to do it again. I know even in our family, Vicky was Catholic, and there was baptism involved when they were kids. And then it was a real challenge for some members of her family when she was getting baptized again. But when I knew this was coming, I started praying about it a little bit and thinking. And in, I think it's 1 Corinthians. I think so. Or no, it could be Hebrews. Anyway, wherever it is, Nancy, you quote it all the time. We're to look at Israel going through the Red Sea as they were baptized. But they also went through the Jordan 40 years later. And there were some of the same people, not a lot, but some. A bunch of them had died, but Joshua didn't, and others, there were some others that had gone through. So this is what I mean when we can look at the Bible for formulas, or we can look at it for permission. And I think we should look at it for permission.
And again, that is such a great freedom that we have to make that choice as the Lord is leading us, and we do. When we do what he says and puts in our heart to do, because it's very transformative. And I love the fact that you took 10 of them without really realizing what you were doing. That is so beautiful. So any other questions? Any other comments? Traditionally, you immerse 3 times. And the first time it's like hi baby, rededicating yourself. It's like you're going in again, saying yes to the Lord, to whatever he has for you in that season, to whatever the revelation he's giving you. Also, the second time, it's basically, it has to do with covenant. Those that you're in covenant with, whether it's your husband, your family, your children, is rededicating yourself to those covenants and saying yes again to those, because basically you're going in and it's this renewal, and there's this yes in your heart to what the Lord has for you. And then the third time, traditionally, is a request, a specific request that you may have for the Lord, whether it pertains to that new season that you're entering into, or a request of a desires of your heart that you have, whether it's to enrich your life and dive deeper in relationship with him and have more revelation of certain things that he's leading you in, or if you desire to be married, for the Lord to reveal that to you as well in its time. So it depends. So there would be, the third one would be a request, if that's if there's something in your heart that you're desiring. Okay. Okay, perfect. So Joseph, now, do you want to share a bit about what the Lord, perfect, here you go.
Evening, folks, I'm Joseph. So amazing that this is all about dedication, sanctification, obedience. I don't know what's going on. And God told me, don't try to understand this. I know you're going to do what you do with your, logical, don't try to understand this. Just be obedient, rest, and trust me. Okay. I've got people coming in. I'm used to doing the lone wolf thing. I'm a freedom fighter. I do what I do. People don't understand me. Might as well go eat worms, whatever. No family, no fellowship, no nothing. He's just bringing family, friends, fellowship, anointings, baptisms in rivers, provisions to my house. And I'm like, God, I don't know what you're doing. He said, don't try to understand this. Just consecrate yourself. I just learned what a mikvah was just now. She just told me. So I have no idea. I'm just gonna trust and obey. But the story of how this happened, I think, is appropriate, because I drive a little electric scooter, right? And I have 3 little chihuahuas and a laundry basket in the back. We're driving around the city, and the battery, I don't realize, is hanging off the bike. It's not connected. There's no power. And yet I'm cruising down the street, la-di-da. He stops my bike right in front of her massage parlor, and I can't go. And so I start trying to figure it out in my own strength, troubleshooting. There's no power. And I realize the battery is that far disconnected. Okay? I said, God, what do you want me to do? So I put the battery back in. I still can't go, even though it's got full power. I said, God, what do you want me to do here? I look up and he says, go. I said, yeah, God, I don't do that. I don't go to places like that. He says, go. I walk in, I meet this lovely lady, and I had been through some tough battles. I was a soup sandwich. I was a mess. I needed a lot of help. She saw me in a way that no one else has seen me, in my spiritual identity, which is classified. But, and just put Humpty Dumpty back together. Okay, and since then, it's just been, I come to the conference, they're telling the story of Joseph, and I'm in a way that I've never heard it before, and I'm like, yep, check, got the t-shirt, yep, God, yep. It's my life, they're telling my life. And so he told me to be baptized. I said, God, I already did that. And she said, the Lord gave her mikvah. So today, we're at the river, 2 dunks in the river. I'm like, okay, God, how many times do I have to do this? So, okay, again, just rest. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. So, okay, perfect. So with a mikvah, obviously, like, we're all witnesses here, and then there's personal witness to what is taking place. And as personal witnesses, we hold him accountable to this act, to his decision, and what the Lord has put in his heart. I see it as we basically bring forth or continue uplifting the King within us. So as we keep him accountable to this act, that is what we're doing, bringing forth that true identity, reminding him and keeping that bar raised for him to meet that bar, and hold him up whenever he needs to be held up. So as witnesses, basically, we're saying yes and agreeing. There's such power in agreement, especially when the Lord is leading us into something. It can be very, very transformative. So I think everybody that's here that will be a witness to this very beautiful act. Oh, I'm okay with it. Yeah, thank you. Oh, perfect. Do we have towels? I think so. Now, as he is getting ready to do this, may we all just engage with the heart of the Father as his son is basically reclaiming back his identity, following the Lord's instructions, and we can just engage with that in agreement in this act. I'm going to say a Hebrew blessing. In English, the translation is, "Blessed are you, Lord our God, sovereign of all, who has kept us alive, sustained us, and brought us to this season." Now in Hebrew, it says, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, shechechianu, vechimanu, vechijianu, lasman hazeh.
Now, my husband is going to sing the Aaronic blessing over Joseph.
When the Lord brought Israel out of Egypt, they were leaving a system where the Pharaoh was God and the priests were far removed from the people. One of the first things he did was tell them, "You are a nation of priests." And he directed later on his priests to bless his people with this blessing. And so this is straight from Scripture. In English, it's, "The Lord will bless you and keep you. The Lord will make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord will lift up his face upon you and give you his everlasting peace." In Hebrew, it goes like this. Yivarechecha Adonai veish merecha Yael Adonai panav elecha v'chonecha Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.
At that sound.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. And thank you so much for being open and allowing us to do something that the Lord was leading us to do. So thank you.
You're welcome. So however confusing I made that message about obedience, you have about a dozen examples tonight that you can follow. Just listen to the Lord, and when you have an opportunity, do what he says. Amen. God bless you. There's still some more food back there, but you're welcome to stick around and fellowship. You're welcome to go. Bless you. And the honor was certainly ours. The honor was ours.